Okay, hello. Hi, my name is Sohani Das. I am a student at Simsbury High School in Connecticut, and my project was about the absence of autonomy and agency for young British, South Asian, and Middle Eastern / North African women in arranged marriages. So I was first inspired to do this project because of in my AP seminar class that I took in sophomore year of high school. I did a similar project, except I wrote about specifically just a young woman in India and how that affected their autonomy and agency in modern day arranged marriages. Oh, sorry, it's not. Has the slide moved for you guys, or is it still stuck on this slide?
It's still stuck on this slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Try to click into it and then try to press next.
Okay, there you go. Okay, thank you. So in the West, we typically conceptualize marriage as a union between two people that is formed on factors such as love, affection, commitment, and attraction that is driven by finding the right person for you. However, in arranged marriages, we typically see that family members or community elders will select a prospective spouse on factors like caste, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, etc. And while this practice was substantial several centuries ago, it has declined substantially in the 19th and 20th centuries. However, Britain remains to this day as one of the few contemporary countries in which this institution still exists, primarily in the South Asian and MENA context. So this includes communities like British Indians, Kurdish communities, etc. And so this led me to my research question for my paper. To what extent does autonomy and agency exist for young British women of South Asian and MENA descent in modern day arranged and forced marriages? So I first conducted a literature review, which includes gathering sources and reading other people's research to develop an argument of my own. So first I looked at research involving British-Dutch researcher Naima and Tahir. And she first presented the idea of an ideological gap between arranged versus forced marriages. And so it would be practical to go into a definition of arranged marriages. So arranged marriages still must demonstrate consent, and they must be based on a fully informed decision made by the individual to consummate the union between themselves and their partner. However, any feeling of duress whatsoever can destabilize an arranged marriage into a forced one. And she describes this as the presence of consent over the absence of coercion. And ultimately, arranged marriages are considered to be vital and integral in collectivist cultures like the ones I just described, where there is a significance placed on the greater involvement of the extended community and the extended and wider community, which sometimes will take precedence over the individual. However, it's also important to note that in the West, it really is, it's not always necessary for this participation from the extended family members in the courtship and the marriage process. I also took a look at research involving Werner, and which ties back into these collectivist societies, which push an ideology of honor and shame that is often, again, rooted in these societies. And when we take a look at female sexuality, the subjugation of the female and the discipline of the female tend to be hallmarks of these societies, in ensuring that these younger generations of women uphold the family name, its honor, and its prestige. And so some acts, such as premarital sex, for example, of women who engage in these acts can tend to lead to a greater risk of being killed by their close kin or facing harm from close kin, also their family. And this typically is at the hands of male relatives. And this stress on female sexuality tends to mask and disguise the fact that honor-related cases of abuse, of murder, occur across a wide and multivariate spectrum. And women who are not willing to acquiesce to their parents' judgment of what they deem to be an honorable groom can often arise in conflicts within the family and can, again, be a trigger for high levels of sustained physical and mental abuse that can continue to be perpetuated after she leaves the household. So Werner posits that the notion of women having autonomy and agency over their own sexuality tends to be in these communities conflated and misplaced with sexual promiscuity. And she ultimately concludes her research by saying that cultural exposure to the West and raising children and rearing children within in the West does little to influence perceptions of first-generation British immigrant parents. In fact, this actually only compounds their fear of their daughters becoming too Westernized, and it's heightened, and their fear is heightened as a result. So my methods involved doing a 3-case study of 3 women. So we have here all three young women, although the woman in the middle pictured here, she was in a forced marriage as a youth. So we have here Banaz Mahmoud, Jasvinder Sanghera, and Shafilia Ahmed. So all 3 women, so I examined all 3 women and came to my conclusion, which is that despite growing up in a westernized society, these young women are still expected to perform at near or the same levels as their South Asian and MENA counterparts within their respective ethnicities and countries. And ultimately, these young women are shackled to their fetters, to the fetters of duty and honor that are enforced by the honor system in repressing their own sexuality, and are therefore forced to sacrifice their physical and mental well-being to adhere to a lifelong status of filial subservience and duty. And just to go back one slide, the young woman in the middle here, she actually escaped from her forced marriage. And she was the reason why I was inspired to do research on British women specifically. And that is a wrap on my project. Thank you. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. So what was the hardest part of your research process?
I think I would say the hardest part was, so the location that I chose, Britain, is a very, there's not a lot of research currently. Like there's a lot of personal experiences and endeavors that were shared, but there's not necessarily a lot of in-depth research as to how young women within this location in the world are affected by arranged and forced marriages and the patriarchal systems. So I would say that was probably the most difficult part of my research yeah.
So what are the next steps for you now that you've completed your project?
I'm hoping to get my research, because I did a research paper. I was hoping that it could get published. I was hoping that my case study could be examined by experts, and hopefully I get feedback from others. So that was mainly what I wanted, what I hope to achieve with this project.
Cool. What was the most unexpected thing that you learned?
I would say probably the part about honor killings. I didn't go into much detail in this presentation, but a lot of women who are in these marriages, refuse to engage in these marriages, face the stigma and face honor killings. So I thought that was pretty surprising for mine.
For sure. And then what advice would you give another student just starting research on this topic?
I would probably say it's good to find scholarly articles, because it was hard to find credible articles just where I was doing research at. So a good idea is probably looking at Google Scholar, looking at published papers in publications, looking at reading books as well. I think books are I would say, a pretty credible source. So just making sure your research is credible is an important part of the process.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
Um,